Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Heroes Podcast. My name is Ryan G from Allied Strategy, and of course, my co-host, the real Pete Kirkwood, your success
That's
maker,
me.
your kingmaker, and of course, he's now currently building people's empire. Today's topic has a lot to do with the hero's bounce back ability. Now, before the podcast, uh, Pete and I were discussing what is the true meaning of such. Now, as of course the discussion went
Mm.
on, we started to agree a bit more on what was meant. Initially, I believe bounce back ability had to do with within trials and tribulations of a hero, a professional, a connoisseur of challenges will evidently meet a moment of error, a moment where he slips up, a moment where he's now learning, to be better. But
Mm.
successful bounce means, he's back at a state that he can continue to the next challenge, meaning success has been reached. Now, we all have been through such events, so I'm curious what Pete has to say about this.
Yeah, I love the fact that you sort of discussed what we mean by a bounce back to start with there, because it's like that saying, don't call it a comeback. People have a very emotional attachment to winning and losing,
Right.
and to combine it all into the same thing, you can get a lot of energy out of that. So
Right.
when you're talking about a bounce back, it has to contain both, right? You have to have fallen somewhere so you can bounce. And if you don't bounce, right, if you don't go high from your low, then you never came back. You just
Right.
endured, right?
Yeah.
Having horrible shit happen to you and putting up with it is not bouncing back. That's endurance. Having horrible shit happen to you by, let's say, your enemy, and then reversing it and putting that horrible shit on them, that's a bounce back. And you
Right.
see that often when you're watching, if you're watching, martial arts, and you see someone's got someone in a lock, and then they get out of it and they get the other guy back into a lock, and it goes, the
Back
table
and forth, right.
the tables turn.
Right.
So when it comes to that ability to bounce back for us, right, as a hero, as a regular person, right, any man, woman, or child, how do you get the bounce out of the fall? Because a lot of things in our lives are really closely tied to our language in our subconscious mind, and we don't put too much effort into it. So if we're talking about a bounce back, firstly, we have to be accepting and comfortable with the fact that we fell, because you can't bounce back if you haven't fallen from a point in the first place. Now, physics are pretty good, well-established laws, and we know, most of us know how they work really well. So that momentum and energy you're going to get in the fall, all that momentum and energy is going to be there for the bounce back. It's up to you to redirect it. And that balance of energy, that measurement of your own internal, I don't want to say motivation, inspiration, is where you're going to achieve that. The movie Django Unchained comes to mind in the way that Django is a former slave, but that energy of his entire life being pushed down as a slave, as soon as he gets that ability to bring it around, he brings it around and he bounces it right back in the face of those slave owners. And he really shows that bounce back, how a slave can actually become more than a slave owner. Not just, oh, well, I'm not a slave anymore. If you don't go and deal with Candy and his shit, no spoilers, you're not really bouncing back. You're just trying not to be subjugated again to being a slave. You're actually not confronting it.
It's a difference between winning and not losing. Trying
Correct.
to win and trying not to lose. They're two completely different games.
Exactly. And psychologically, it has a very big impact on us, because the I didn't die. Okay. I almost died. I'd better be careful I don't die again. I'd better keep my head down so I don't get killed is way different to, whoa, I fucked that up, but I worked out how to do it right. And I came out better than ever. Completely different. You're going to learn a different lesson. But if you don't have the endurance, the discipline to make sure that your bounce back comes up, right? Like if you don't have that self-inspiration within you to lift yourself back, to come back and say, no, hang on, you punched me in the face, I ain't going to turn the other cheek. It's going to come back around to you, mate. If you don't have that, you're going to fall into endurance. You're going to fall into just trying to survive. And then down the road, someone's going to have to heal that victim trauma. You or someone else or someone. You know, I personally had a situation that I endured when I was 15 or 16 years old. And fuck it, let's be honest. I was raped by a woman. And I thought that it didn't do shit to me. I thought it didn't do anything to me. I didn't care. But it wasn't until in the last year that I actually had a conversation with someone where I realized that internally the way I was processing interactions with women was from that point of, oh, fuck, I might get raped, which is not a position of power. It's not, that's not something I want my subconscious to constantly be checking on, right? Like I'm not going to put myself in any situations where I'm going to be in danger. So I don't need to be checking that. And I don't need to be constantly holding myself back from engaging with other human beings out of that fear. And until I processed it at 34 years old, I hadn't bounced back for the last 18 years since 16 years old when it happened. I just endured. And I didn't even know. So that's a really personal example to bring up. But I have seen how it shaped a lot of my interactions and a lot of things, because now that I have been through that process and I have actually psychologically gone through and sorted out that stuff, the way that that has bounced back in my relationships has been phenomenal, because there was always like a piece that would never quite mesh, where it'd be an energetic, I couldn't quite energetically be completely comfortable, and any woman could feel that. And she's not like, oh, right, he's a rape victim, I can tell, I know how to deal with this. It's not going to fucking happen. You've got to deal with you. So as I dealt with it, now that energy has amplified and I can feel how natural the energy flows in those connections with me and other women, you know, and even to a lesser extent with men as well, because there's a deeper understanding. When I gain an understanding about women, it applies to the world, it applies to men too, right? Men and women exist in a positive, negative, in a hot, cold.
Exactly, by association.
If there are no women, there are no men. Exactly. They're, you know, it's like you have a North Pole, you have a South Pole. Without one, the other doesn't exist. It's like magnetism. And that ability to bounce back, it's something I almost didn't recognize. It's something I almost didn't care about. And I'm really glad, Ryan, that you've actually brought it up as a subject, because so often that conviction to go further, oh, you don't need, you've done enough. You've done enough. I mean, look, he's learned his lesson, leave him alone. No, she doesn't need to hear that. Who the fuck is saying this shit to you? Are they the people that are calibrating how you are bouncing back from your life, or are they trying to input their own shit onto you?
Well said.
Because if I've been through something and I need to go and do something to heal that, someone else doesn't have the right to tell me about my experience. I mean, they have the right to express themselves, and I can choose whether I take it on board or listen or not. But they don't have a right to tell me what to do.
Exactly.
And I find that the bounce back, actually, there's something in there as well about freedom. If you don't feel free, you can't bounce, because you're too rigid in your thoughts and your behaviors and your actions, and that stretch that comes from the growth as you come on the bounce back, you just won't allow yourself to stretch that far because it'll be uncomfortable, it'll hurt, it'll be challenging.
It reminds me of that image where you have this huge animal, and
Yep.
because it's been, beaten into submission,
Hmm.
you can now safely tie a rope around its neck and just place the rope onto a chair. And
And the
that's the
animal won't run away.
hero. Exactly. So until the this animal, the hero, this beast, realizes what has happened, acknowledges the loss, and just goes, fuck this rope, fuck the chair, I'm going home. Which is a South
You're
Park
trapped.
reference for those who didn't catch that.
Yep.
Um,
Until all I can picture is the elephant in my mind with the rope around its leg. Like you didn't say elephant, but I can picture it, right? Because I
yeah,
know that principle of psychology. That's how they train them.
that's how they trained him. And that's how we're being trained to some extent. Because
To a very large extent.
tell us more.
Well, the trick to the elephant is that you don't go and find a full-grown elephant and try and tie a rope around it. You
No,
get a
I'll kill
baby
you.
elephant, and you get a baby elephant, and you put a chain on it,
All right.
and it can't beat that. An adult elephant will destroy the chain, but a baby elephant can't beat the chain. And then after a little bit, you can swap the chain for a rope, and the elephant never tries again because it's spent a week learning that it can't get out of it, so it doesn't waste its energy. And then for the rest of its life, it'll obey a rope.
So does the baby elephant becoming an adult elephant has now a story in his mind, in its mind,
Correct.
that's being permeated. So your bounce back ability is directly correlated with what you tell yourself.
Correct. Yes, it's with your awareness because the elephant that is unaware is completely powerless in that situation. Whereas, soon as the elephant becomes aware of what's going on, then, oh, look, now I can do a bounce back and I can go and show the ringmaster what it's like to have
A
the
rope around
ability to
his
not
neck.
move because you've been restrained. I put my
Right.
foot on you. Like, that bounce back from the elephant's available to it, but it's not aware that the bounce back is available. And as human beings, as adults, the first 7 years of our lives are so formative, and they teach us so much about what we can expect from the world that if you
Right.
don't actually get good references for certain things, you'll never know that you can bounce back. You'll never know you can break that rope because you never saw anyone break a rope. You never
Right.
saw anyone stand up and go, you know what? That's not fucking acceptable. I don't like your tone of voice. You sit the fuck back down over there and show some proper respect, eh? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Maybe you
And
just saw people throw punches and then you never learned how to do an emotional handle. Or maybe you never saw anyone stand up, so you never learned how to set boundaries. And that difference, that awareness for you to become someone who's good at setting boundaries or good at regulating emotion, that is a
exactly.
bounce back coming from 3 years old, 2 years old, 7 years old to 55 years old. I don't give a fuck how old you are.
Yeah.
There's no time limit.
There's no time limit for
And,
trauma.
no. And there's no time limit for freeing yourself from trauma and healing yourself from trauma and any of that shit. There's no such thing as
Exactly.
it was too long ago. It doesn't exist. And that bounce
Exactly.
back, I think it's such a beautiful phrase because you're born a whole person, and through life that gets altered. Getting back to
Right.
that purity of self, you want to go back to that. You want to go back to that childlike nature where you're open to the possibilities of the world and you're open to
Exactly.
understanding how it all works. Not that adult mind frame of, nah, I've already learned it already, bro. Shut up. I know better than you.
I see.
That's
I
not a
see.
bounce back.
Well, this
And
suddenly became a way deeper subject than I initially imagined because now, the stories you tell yourself are usually the stories that are being permeated within a culture, a family,
yes,
and all these traumas. Most traumas, when it comes to adult, are formed indeed in when a child is young, in
mhm,
someone's youth. Now, for those of you who didn't know, I also have another podcast with Ivan and Sumit Chatterjee. Sumit is a flow state coach, right? And
Yep.
just as weekend, we discussed the effects of child traumas on flow state. Now, the whole idea with flow state is again, you're in the flow, it's enough challenge, there's enough fun, and this will help with anyone's bounce back ability. Now, what I found out about me was my preference to, uh, overcompensate overly. So I'm trying to explain things too much. I'm talking way too much, blah, blah. Apparently has a lot to do with me being abandoned as a child to some extent. Has a lot to do with the mother or apparently parental presence, etc., etc. And that made sense looking back at my past. Now, this goes all the way back to, the awareness part. The moment I started to, do some more research into my history, compare notes with, the theory itself. I'll send
Hmm.
you the link later, by the way.
Sure.
I started to realize, oh shit, this is how these child traumas have been affecting me in my professional career, my
Hmm.
love life, my relationship with friends.
Hmm.
It is all making sense now. And the more you start to become aware of it, the more you start to realize I have been talking myself out of so many things.
Yes.
And here's where things get trippy because um, when you get sick, it's never just one thing that makes you sick. It's an amalgamation of either you not taking enough vitamin, etc., 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 but also could be not just bacteria, it could also be a fungal infection, it can also be actual virus, right? Or more.
Yeah. Yeah. Bacterial, it's all about keeping yourself at a level to fight off constant
Exactly. Now,
threats.
what
That's what immune
if it
system does.
would be, the trauma could be similar to bacteria, etc., foreign objects breaking you down, breaking your psyche down,
Great
breaking
analogy.
exactly just eroding your spiritual energy, your mental energy, and maybe even more. And what I've learned from Sumit was traumas tend to come with other traumas. And within my culture, especially because I'm Indian, there's a high propensity on doing well in life,
Hmm.
the social status, on achieving, having the money. It's this like within the Indian culture, no matter where you go, you have to be a doctor, this and this and this, and being the eldest. Um,
Yep.
I had to almost kill a part of myself to go, fuck it, let's get that diploma. And they will, and I remember, um, the difference between enduring and actually successfully making it. That's the full bounce.
Hmm.
Was the first 2 years
Hmm.
in the Netherlands with the culture shock, with not having friends, me just pushing myself to limits, me failing tests, me having to switch um, to a new study at least twice, me having to figure out a way to digest the loss. It's not easy. I remember the first time I had to go through the first time I had to accept and acknowledge the fact that I will not become an architect. This is not the
Yep.
path for me. I became extremely aware of it, but I had the hardest time accepting it. I remember laying in bed for 2 weeks, crying myself to sleep, feeling sorry about myself, etc., etc. And the only thing that kept me from ending it all was, I don't want to live like this. Let's try again.
Yes.
And Murphy's
Yes.
Law, I tried again, failed again. It's like, fuck, that's another year wasted. And I had to acknowledge maybe the university isn't for me. Maybe I should go to more of an applied university. So I'll no longer am I a researcher. Now I'm an actual career professional making that move, right? What's up?
I oh man, I can see here how this is a fantastic example, right? I'm not going to go super deep and give away everything about your how you've overcome this, right? That's a conversation for people to have in person.
Right,
Everyone's different, but I can see there's like a dichotomy between you're looking to be that guy who's respected for what he does. That comes from your
right,
culture, right? That
right.
is
That's
that
true.
is pure.
Very true.
But the part that's fallen on top of that, that's become oppressive and toxic, is that unless you have the qualification of a doctor, it's not good enough and doesn't count.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that if you can do at the level a doctor does, then aside from the whole cultural stigma, which is that oppression, it is that thing you're enduring, it is that thing you have to bounce back from, it's got nothing to do with it. Because there's a
Well,
lot of,
it's a. You
well, here's the
remember when
thing.
I say life is funny? I
Yeah,
ultimately became a business doctor because
that's
if
where I
you,
was going.
yeah, 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 exactly.
Right? Because what you've actually done is you have proved to yourself, on one hand, that the doingness isn't about what other people want you to do, it's about the right doingness. So
Yeah.
you've found your way towards business. You've proved that the qualification isn't isn't actually the ticket, it's the knowledge that the qualification represents, because you've got that in other areas, and you also have knowledge that comes without a qualification, without a title, because I don't hand out fucking titles to my students for their achievements. Fuck that. They can pick their own. And that ability is, you are now a podcast host who is known internationally,
That's
and
true.
people discuss you around the other side of the world, who is far more successful than 99.9% of the doctors who were your competition or your peers
So to
that you
speak,
were
right?
going through that cultural transition with. And you've actually bounced back because you've freed yourself from that cultural conditioning trap and created your own success, like the young Ryan would have resonated with before his culture told him otherwise. Whereas
Exactly.
those other people have endured their culture, they've not bounced back from it. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
To an extent, it does make sense. What I started to realize is your definition of success defines the bounce back as well, right? Because here I
Definitely.
was defining my success in accordance to a culture, not
Yes.
realizing to an extent, yes, I want to help people, right? Because I want to have that social status. What does a doctor do? He heals people and does he heals the lives of people. But business is the same. If I can somehow simplify the process of improving a business and actually improve the business, logically, this can be applied to a person's life as well and teach them the doctrine of your life can be a business because they reflect each other a lot. And through that, without going too deep into my coaching, and of course, to a certain extent, your coaching,
Well,
the story you tell yourself,
go for it. I was just
go
gonna.
on,
I was just gonna mention on the business
right? So
how.
the story you tell yourself about your business, about your success,
Mhm.
about your love life, about yourself becomes so important that the moment you fall down, get smacked in the face, or because we go to BJJ, we're in a very bad position with someone's elbow in our throat.
Been there.
Yeah, that shit hurts. We have to make a choice. Tap and start over, or be willing to endure so that there's one moment that I can strike back and go for my success.
Yep.
And both options are valid. I mean, after tapping out, I can remember, okay, cool, I feel, now I know what I'm capable of. I've survived. That's why I like BJJ, because BJJ is one of the few sports where it's extremely acceptable to lose.
Hmm.
It is the whole, and I had to get used to this for a half a year. Losing for me was torture, especially with my mindset back in the day. I want to win no matter what. Like the fuller was, I entered my Achilles, I entered my ACL, I almost broke my elbow with that mindset, and I had to learn to lose. Ah,
Hmm. Hmm.
learning to lose is extremely important in BJJ. I had to learn to be the best loser, not the
You
biggest,
do
not the
the best.
sorest, but the
Completely
best
agree.
in the business. And
Completely
it
agree.
exactly right. So it accumulated into, it doesn't matter if you get elbowed in the face to an extent. The fight continues, but now the fight is no longer just a fight; it becomes a play. Even if I lose, it now becomes, can I play the game of borderline lethal combat in a way that is very fun for me, very healing for me, very, in such a way that it makes me
I
happy.
agree.
And
I agree.
I don't
Yep.
know if you saw my last BJJ reels, the first time I posted it. That guy always beats me. But now that I'm stronger through the IMC process and we finally meet each other after a year, I am now dominating him. Was that
Yep.
did I train with that intention in mind? No. But now the hero is stronger. Now the hero
Absolutely.
has played the game longer. Now that I've endured all these trials and tribulations, I'm just a little bit closer to that success. And
Yes.
in this
And
case,
and what
right? Yeah,
what I'm seeing so clearly is this: it's not about the physical, is it?
not just about the physical. It's about, as he's putting me in bad positions, am I willing to reverse it into my advantage? Because there's a moment that he's in full mount, meaning his knees are past my knees and he's on top of me, meaning he has way more advantage than me because, he could easily strike if he wanted to.
Yes.
I managed to trick him into thinking I'm going this way, went the other way, and now I can bring both he and I into a more neutral position. And
And
as
that's
he,
the perfect example because you tricked him into going that way and that way, and you proved that it's nothing to do with the physical, right? Because people get caught on the physical. And it's like you exist in the physical world. Yeah, yeah, like right, physical, sure. But it actually is all in here because
exactly,
you mentally outplayed him and then it manifested in the physical world.
exactly, this is a IMC doctrine where the more you've worked on the inner, right, the more the outer will reflect that. And looking back at my fights, that was one of the moments where I was like, I am now outsmarting a stronger, way stronger opponent. A way
Yep, I
more
did exactly the
explosive.
same thing yesterday. I did
I know,
like
right?
someone who literally like he's a walking weapon. Like I would never have fought this guy in my life, ever, ever. But it was like a casual situation of hey, let's have a roll on the mat. And his technique was nothing. His strength was all there, but it didn't. He didn't know how to defend my
Right,
arm around his neck. Boom, you're done.
right. He
And
can snap
that
your arm in half just by looking at you, but we've practiced
not when
technique.
it's
We've
around his neck
practiced.
and locked
Yeah,
in. Like
right,
you can't do anything when it's when I've got you like that because you weren't paying attention to my ankles hooking your legs because you were too busy just using your arms. Like, and that comes from a thing where it's all up here. It's
right.
about that mental side of it. Yeah, the physical side is the manifestation, but that bounce back has nothing to do with the physical reality except that's where you see it. The bounce back experiences it entirely internally and you see it in the physical
Exactly.
manifestation.
So does Seeing how I
That's
only
pretty
have
much it for
a
me, brother.
minute.
We're about for time.
Exactly. So I would end on this. It's a Les Brown quote. If you can look up, you can get up. If you can take it, you can make it, being the word can. And now, even more pointedly, if you can see it, you can believe in it. And it's that belief in you, in your own prowess, that is the difference between simply enduring it, just coping, and actually breaking through whatever glass
Correct.
ceiling society, your parents, your company that you work for, or even more intimate, you yourself have placed on to yourself.
So to put that in specifics, right? If we say that's beautiful language, but how do we do that? Well, internally, I healed all that internal rape trauma of myself, but I couldn't
Sure.
do all of it. I couldn't do all of it
Right.
because the one thing was missing was information that I didn't have. So I
Correct.
needed somebody else to ask me a question that would make me think in a way I hadn't before.
Right.
And once and literally I said, fuck, what am I going to do about this chick? I don't know. And they said, why don't you just not fuck her? And I was like, what do you wait, I have that choice? Oh, I have that choice. And I never knew. For 18 years, I never knew I had that choice because I'd never been asked the question. And then when it came there, then I could do the healing and then it changed the things. So what I'm going to say to people is you have to do a lot of this yourself.
Yeah.
But don't feel any kind of bad if you need to reach out for help and ask anyone. Ask Ryan, ask me, ask your mum, ask your dad, fucking ask somebody. Don't suffer in silence.
Good point. Don't suffer in silence. Ask help.
That's what I'm finishing on, brother. Boss.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, this has again been a very insightful podcast. We have heard things I did not expect, and we've learned a lot of things. That being said, if it is to be, it is up to me, and thus, if it is to be, it's also up to you. May your life never be the same, and I wish you a fantastic and, of course, productive morning, evening, and good night.
Boss.
Was